Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our second Law Week session for 2020. If you joined us yesterday, welcome back. Thank you. I'm Fiona Hudson, and I'm the Programs Coordinator for the Golden Valleys Regional Libraries. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, and I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. We welcome you to ask questions and be a part of the conversation today, and you can do so by placing them in the comments section below or emailing us at asklawweek@gvrlc.vic.gov.au. And we'll try to get to your questions at the conclusion of the presentation. Today, we're discussing prevention of elder abuse and COVID-19. And I'm now going to welcome our presenter from Seniors Rights Victoria, Gary Ferguson. Welcome, Gary.
Thanks, Fiona, and thank you for inviting me to present today in this series of forums with Goulburn Valley Library Service. Before I begin, I'm just going to get the slide presentation up. So just give me a moment. It's not working. I'm having a few difficulties. Just bear with me.
While you're doing that, Gary, I can mention some of our other sessions that are happening this week, and that'll give you a chance to work that out. Or you've got it?
Yeah, I've got it.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks, Fiona. That's good. Okay. All right, so today what I'm going to be talking about is I'm going to talk about Seniors Rights Victoria, and I'm going to talk about the work that we do in elder abuse and some of the things that you might think about in keeping yourself safe. I'd also like to acknowledge that today this is a forum that is done in conjunction with Goulburn Valley Libraries and is also part of Law Week.
So, welcome back. We're sorry about that dropout in the link. Hopefully we won't have any more problems and it'll be a smooth presentation. Sorry about that, Gary. Over to you.
That's fine. So just a reminder, in case you didn't get what we said in this particular slide, this is not legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. And we do understand that these sorts of presentations could produce some specific issues for you or concerns. And if that's the case, we have a telephone helpline, which is free and operates Monday to Friday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And the contact number is 1300 368 821. I will mention the telephone helpline again towards the end, so you can note it down. And you'll find the telephone helpline at the bottom of each slide as we go through. All right. Now I'm just going to set a little bit of a context for this. And what we know in Australia at the moment is the population is aging rapidly. When we did the 2016 census, what we found out was in Victoria, there were 5.9 million people living here. And of those people living here, about 21% were over 60 years of age. So what that means is that 1 in 5 people in Victoria at the moment are over 60 years of age. The other thing we know is that of those people who are over 60 years of age, about a third of them come from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. This is a reflection of the World War II post-period migration, when a number of people came from European countries, the UK and other countries to live in Australia. So those people who came here then are now in their 60s and 70s. The other thing about the population we know in Victoria is that about 49,000 people identify as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, and about 4% of them are over 60 years of age. The other thing I did when I was looking at the population was I also had a look at the local population in the Greater Shepparton area. And what I found was in the 2016 census, there are about 64,000 people living in the Shepparton area, of which about 15,000 were over 60 years of age. That comprises 24% of the population, which is 1 in 4 people. So what we can see in Australia at the moment and in Victoria is that the ageing population is increasing rapidly, and that we as a community have to turn our minds to that and to respond to that as a society. Now, the other thing we're likely to see when we see an increasing ageing population is we're likely to see the creep of ageism into people's behaviours and actions and into conversation. What ageism does is it discriminates against older people. So in Australia at the moment, we know that if a person's over 50 years of age and they're seeking employment, they will experience discrimination based on their age more than people who are under 50 years of age. The other thing that ageism does is it devalues older people. And you know, that can be represented in off-the-cuff comments made in families, for example, or networks, which describe older people as having lost their marbles because they're getting really, really old. Okay, so what we were talking about was the context. We were talking about the increasing ageing population in Australia. I had a little look at the Shepparton, the Greater Shepparton area's population, which is about 64,000 in 2016, of which about 15,000 of people were over 60 years of age. And that equates to about 24% of people, so 1 in 4. So that's quite high. And we also talked about ageism and the fact that what we're seeing at the moment is a slight increase in ageism, particularly as a result of COVID-19. And what ageism does is it denies the rights of older people to make their own choices. It can devalue and disregard them through comments and discussion and media. And the other thing that ageism does is besides denying the rights of older people, it stops people from making their own choices. It devalues them. Okay, what I then moved into was talking about elder abuse. And what I said at the beginning was that this doesn't happen in every family, that, you know, this abuse is intentional, that it doesn't include everyday family dynamics, which might include, you know, tensions and conflicts and arguments. What we're seeing in elder abuse is quite an intentional abuse and mistreatment outside of the everyday family dynamics that we see in families. So it's important to keep hold of that. What I then went on to was to talk about a particular case study that we've had at Seniors Rights Victoria on the helpline in the past month as a result of the COVID-19 situation. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this now. We've de-identified people's names, but in essence, the content of the case study is the same as the issue that was brought to us by this particular person. So Jane is 85 years old. Her husband died 10 years ago. She's retired. She continues to live in the family home in regional Victoria. She's in reasonable health. However, she does have slight mobility problems because of an arthritic condition in her knees. She walks with the aid of a stick, and although a frame and scooter have been suggested to Jane, she sees these as impacting negatively on her independence, which she's keen to preserve. For some time, Jane's daughter has been assisting her with banking. Initially, Jane had set up an arrangement where Sarah would come and collect the passbook from Jane each week, make a withdrawal at the local branch, and then return the money and passbook back to Jane. This was working satisfactorily for Jane, and so what she decided to do was to set up an ATM card for Sarah so that she could go directly to the bank and make the withdrawals. So Jane has been reasonably cautious in setting up this arrangement. The other thing she does is, because she wants to continue to be able to have the decision making in relation to her finances, she checks her paper bank statements regularly so that she's able to make those decisions. And, you know, a lot of people don't check their bank statements regularly, but Jane was one of these people who did that diligently. Since COVID-19, Jane's self-isolated and Sarah hasn't been visiting her mother. So she doesn't, and the reason she hasn't been visiting her mother is because Sarah has 2 teenage children. They live separately to Sarah's mother, Jane, and they don't want to put Jane at added risk of getting COVID-19. The other impact for Sarah was that she was working part-time in a local cafe, but this closed as a result of the COVID-19 lockdown. In the most recent bank statements that Jane received, she's noticed that there have been a number of ATM withdrawals which she hasn't authorised. Jane is very upset by this. She feels that, she knows that the only other person who has an ATM card to her bank account is Sarah. She feels an enormous betrayal of trust, and it's impacting on her financial well-being. And as a result, she's also being emotionally and psychologically impacted on as well. Because of her concerns, what she decides to do is to speak to the local council worker who assists Jane with domestic tasks each week. While the worker is not able to provide a solution for Jane, she does know about Seniors Rights Victoria, and she gives Jane the information to contact the Seniors Rights Victoria helpline. When Jane contacts us, Seniors Rights Victoria suggests that we contact the bank on her behalf and withdraw the ATM card and thereby stop Sarah's access to Jane's account. Now, when we suggest this to Jane, and given that she has the right to make her own choices, she's somewhat hesitant because of the impact it might have on her relationship with Sarah, and also the impact it might have on her contact with her grandchildren. So Seniors Rights Victoria suggests that Jane have a think about it and that she come back and talk to us once she's made a decision. Jane indicates that at this point that she might be able to help Sarah financially, but not without knowing prior to what she's doing. She takes a few days to think about what to do. After a few days, Jane contacts Seniors Rights Victoria again and agrees to withdraw the ATM and Sarah's authority. Seniors Rights Victoria assists Jane to set up a direct debit for her bills and arrange for the bank to pay the supermarket when Jane's shopping is delivered. When the restrictions are lifted, Jane has agreed to have community transport to take her shopping, accompanied by her regular community worker. Jane's also decided on her own volition that she will have a discussion with Sarah about the situation and let her know what she's done. Seniors Rights Victoria's social worker made available to Jane the possibility of mediating that discussion and assisting her with having the discussion with Sarah. So overall, what we saw here was because of Jane's isolation related to COVID-19, she was being financially abused, which impacted on her psychologically and emotionally. She had someone that she could reach out to, who was the council worker. The council worker had the information about Seniors Rights Victoria, and as a result of her contact with Seniors Rights Victoria, we were able to address the issue. All of this assistance and support to Jane was provided free of charge. Jane continues to be happy with the arrangement. What Jane also knows is that at any time she can contact Seniors Rights Victoria if she has any other further concerns about the arrangements or about Sarah's behaviour. We've made Jane aware that abuse can reoccur, and so we've ensured that Jane understands if that's the case, she can come back to Seniors Rights Victoria at any time. Now, just to describe what elder abuse is, it's any form of mistreatment or abuse of an older person, usually by someone with whom they have a relationship of trust. And that relationship of trust will usually be with a family member. So in Jane's case, it was with her adult daughter, but it could also be with a relative or a close friend with whom the older person has had a relationship for some time. In the relationship of trust for the work that Seniors Rights Victoria does, we don't deal with any relationships where there's a professional association or a consumer transaction. So I'll give you an example. If someone came to Seniors Rights Victoria to make a complaint against a doctor, and they might be able to establish that they have a trusting relationship with that doctor, that wouldn't come under Seniors Rights Victoria brief because it's a professional association and there's also a fee being paid there. So what we would do is we would assist the person by giving them referral information where they could take that complaint. Seniors Rights Victoria was set up in 2008 to assist older people who are being abused and mistreated, mainly by their family. Now, the other thing to say about elder abuse is that any older person may become the victim of abuse. Men and women of any income level, any cultural group, persons in good health or persons disabled physically or mentally, or persons who are ill may be abused by someone close to them. There is no defining factor of who is or will be abused. Now, in the next slide, what I'm going to do is just explain some of the different types of abuse. So what you can see here in the first column are the different types of abuse. In the middle column, what they relate to. So for example, financial relates to property, assets and money. And in the final column, some examples of that. Now, most people, when I talk about elder abuse, will immediately think of extreme examples because that's what's represented in the media. Often what you'll see are examples in the media of elder abuse, which is quite extreme. So for example, it might be an older person who has a family member living with them who's supposed to be providing care and they're not. And subsequently, the older person is suffering from neglect, malnutrition, maybe not having the right medical treatment, maybe not having their medications provided to them, those sorts of things. They're the sorts of examples that you are going to see in the media, and they comprise a small percentage of the total elder abuse which occurs. Most of the elder abuse will occur over a period of time, and it might start with little things. So it might start with something like someone is borrowing money from an older person, maybe an adult son or daughter or another relative, on the basis that they'll repay it, and they don't. Now, even though we might say that that's quite a minor example of elder abuse or a subtle example of elder abuse, the trauma that it causes for the older person is very significant because it impacts on them in a number of ways. All right, so what if you're watching this today and you're thinking, this is actually happening to me? The first thing Seniors Rights Victoria says, if there is something happening to you as a result of the behaviours or actions of a family member or relative, and you think it's not okay, then it's not okay. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. My grandparents, when they retired, decided that they wouldn't answer any knocks that came to the door after 9 o'clock at night, because that made them feel safe in their own home. We as children thought it was silly and we giggled at them. But for them, it made them feel safe. And that's really all that mattered. For them, it was okay. Parent. What's important to recognise is that adult children make their own decisions and choices. And so if someone is actually abusing or mistreating an older person, that's a choice they're making. It's quite intentional. So it's not the fault of the older person. If it is happening to you, talk to someone. Talk to someone very early on. So in the case of Jane, what we saw was that she was able to talk to her counsel worker. You might have someone else who you can connect with or who connects with you on a regular basis and who you can talk to about these matters. Alternatively, you can come to Seniors Rights Victoria. often people will come to us to talk about issues of concern, even though they don't want to take any action, and that's okay as well. Finally, if it is happening to you and you're not too sure about whether you want to take action or not, there are ways you can protect yourself and be safe. And towards the end of this presentation, I'm going to talk about safety planning, where we'll cover some of this information. Obviously, what Seniors Rights Victoria wants is for you to prevent it from happening. And so the ways in which we do that in being aware and keeping safe is through community education. This session is a very abridged version of a fuller session that we would run face-to-face to seniors groups throughout Victoria. It raises awareness about what elder abuse is, what the risks are, and how to prevent it. It also starts conversations within the community and within groups and within society. It's important to plan for the future. And, you know, it doesn't have to be overwhelming plans. It can be just little things. So, for example, I remember giving a talk to a group, and when I talked about planning for the future, a woman who was 92 years old said, "Gary, how can I plan for the future?" The implication being was that she might die soon. And what we talked about was what she had done that morning to come to the group. And so she told me that what she'd done was, you know, she'd showered earlier, she got a breakfast earlier, she got dressed earlier because she had to be ready for community transport to pick her up to bring her to the group. Those are the sorts of things that are about planning for the future. And in COVID-19, because of the self-isolation, that might seem a little bit unrealistic. But, you know, you might include things within the COVID-19 context, which are about telephoning friends or family on a regular basis. So you put that into your plan. The other thing is, our lawyers often recommend that when people are thinking about the medium to longer term plan for their own future, that they think about putting into place financial enduring powers of attorney and other such documents. Remain active, which may seem a bit difficult at the moment, but I know that in my local area, there are lots of seniors walking, getting out and about, even though there is a self-isolation encouragement. I think it's still reasonable for people to be able to go out for exercise. Stay independent, and, you know, I can't tell you what, you know, that will mean for you individually. In Jane's case, we saw that for her to have a sense of her own independence, she didn't want to move to a scooter or a walking frame. She wanted to just be able to walk with the aid of a stick. So it's whatever you decide makes you feel independent. And it's important, as I said previously, to maintain some connections outside of the family context or with people who you trust, which might be other relatives. Okay. Now, before I go on to talk about Seniors Rights Victoria, I just want to give a bit of a plug for June the 15th, which is World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. On June the 15th each year, we mark World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. And this year, Seniors Rights Victoria is having Stir a Cuppa for seniors. And we're going to do it virtually. And you can find out more information from our website or by telephoning the helpline. Everyone can join in. There are various ways to do it, taking a photo of yourself, having a cup of tea, wearing something purple, or joining us on our Zoom afternoon tea with Jared Mansour, who is the Commissioner for Victorian Seniors, as well as the Ambassador for the Prevention of Elder Abuse. All right, Seniors Rights Victoria is a free statewide service. We operate throughout Victoria. Our only and main office is in the Central Business District of Melbourne. And what we recognise is that most people will not be able to come into the office for various reasons. Might be distance, might be mobility problems, might be the difficulty finding it. So when you contact Seniors Rights Victoria, you contact them via the telephone helpline, which operates 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday, and is 1300 368 821. When you telephone the helpline and it's operating during this period, usually one of the social workers will pick up the telephone, or if there's not a worker available at the moment, you leave a message and we call you back. We provide, as you saw in Jane's case, specialised legal service and advocacy, which is our social workers. We also provide support and education for professionals and staff. So you might assume, for example, that the council worker that gave the information to Jane had been trained by Seniors Rights Victoria staff, and we also have a website. If you have any issues of concern, regardless of how small you might think they are, it's best to telephone the helpline on 1300 368 821. Now, you do have, because I often think about, well, if someone doesn't want to contact our telephone helpline and they want to contact a local service, what is there available? We do a lot of work with Goulburn Valley Community Legal Centre, which is based in Shepparton, but also does outreach work to various towns around the Greater Shepparton area. They are still operating during this period. They're doing most of their services via the telephone like Seniors Rights Victoria, and their phone number is 5831 0900. The final thing I want to leave you with today is some of the resources we have, which you can obtain either by going to our website or telephoning the helpline, and we'll be happy to post them out to you directly. The first one is a help sheet called Plan for Your Safety. It has steps in it that you can take to improve your safety on a number of levels, including personally, financially, and around the home. So it's broader than just looking at steps that you can take in relation to your safety to protect yourself from elder abuse. It also has information in there for plans in case of an emergency, and there's a practical section which is a safety plan for you to complete and keep somewhere safe, and even maybe let others know where you keep it or give them a copy. The other resource we have is a little booklet which is called Care for Your Assets, and is particularly useful for people who might be thinking about moving out of their home into the home of a family member, often or maybe onto an outbuilding on the same property. These arrangements are often called granny flat arrangements. And what we find is that a lot of people enter into those arrangements but don't put anything in writing. This booklet talks about what you might need to think about before you put those arrangements in place. And the information in it is relevant for not only the older person, but the family member who's maybe going to provide the accommodation to the older person. The other information in the book relates to if an adult son or daughter or relative had made an approach to an older person to move into their house, what to think about before you agree to that arrangement. What we find is that in lots of cases of elder abuse, the adult son or daughter has moved back home because of a crisis, and there's been no discussion prior to that about what the arrangement will mean, how long it will be for, whether they will contribute to bills, those sorts of things. So this booklet maps that out a bit more for people to think about. And the final booklet is concerned about an older person. At Seniors Rights Victoria on our helpline, about 50% of the calls we get are from people who are either relatives, family members or close friends of the older person, and are concerned about them because they're being mistreated or abused. While Seniors Rights Victoria is happy to talk with these people, eventually we are going to have to talk to the older person directly themselves. So what this booklet provides is information for the concerned person and what they can do to ensure the safety of the older person, as well as their own safety, and also what they can do to support the older person to contact an organisation like Seniors Rights Victoria. Again, all of these resources are available free from Seniors Rights Victoria by going to our website or contacting the telephone helpline on 1300 368 821. In conclusion, what I would like to say is that elder abuse is going to be a growing issue as a result of the increasing ageing population in Australia. We can stop that from happening by raising awareness and talking about it. By doing that, we contribute to the prevention of elder abuse and also declaring that elder abuse is not acceptable. There's also help and support available for people who are being abused or mistreated, which recognises that the older person has the right to live with dignity and make their own decisions. Thank you for listening to me today, and thank you for the Goulburn Valley Libraries inviting me to present to you today on elder abuse and seniors' rights Victoria.
Thanks, Gary. That was great. Thank you for your presentation and for sticking with us. It was a little bit of a premature start there a couple of times, but thank you for your presentation. It was certainly very comprehensive. We've had some comments that were more about the presentation as in it's an interesting topic and certainly interesting content, but it seems to be very comprehensive as yet. We haven't had any questions come in, but feel free if you're out there watching to pop your question in below in the comment section or email us at asklawweek@gvrlc.vic.gov.au, and we will endeavour to post those answers in the comment section below for the next 24, 48 hours. We'll definitely get, Gary, some of those screenshots and maybe post them with some of those details, like the World Elder Abuse Day and the contact details.
Sure.
If you have any
Yes,
problems and wish to get in contact with someone. But I think that's it. So thanks, Gary, for joining us. We're really appreciative of you coming and sharing your knowledge with us today. It's something that I think even if we aren't, necessarily in that situation, we certainly know people who are senior or could be potentially, in a situation that may not be to their liking. And it also gives thought about whether some of the things that we take for granted is not necessarily of benefit for them.
Yes.
So thank you very much for joining us, everyone out there. Thank you for sticking with us with our multiple starts. We'll hope to get that ironed out in the next few days. Tomorrow we'll be joined at 3 o'clock with Marcus for handy tips for renters. So if that's something that you're interested in, make sure you jump on at 3 and we'll be doing this all over again. This video will be available to watch for the next week or so, although I don't believe there's probably content in there that will become irrelevant.
No.
So this is one that we can leave up in a long time, and you'll also be able to access it on our website. So yeah, that's it. Thank you for joining us today, and I'll see you all tomorrow.